Hello and welcome to Time to Think Identity. This is the fifth in our Time to Think series of seminars. They've been designed for parents, caregivers and all family members who are involved in supporting a young person. So it is myself, Amy, and my colleague Steph who are going to be going through the seminar with you today. We're both members of the Children and Young People's team, and we work fundamentally within schools, working with young people, delivering one-to-ones and other interventions. And we wanted to bring these seminars to you partly based on what young people have been telling us when we speak to them, and partly around some of the themes that we know can be an issue for parents and their young people. So today we're going to be looking at what identity is, all the little component parts of identity. And in specific, we're going to focus in on sexual identity language and gender identity language as well, because this is one of the areas that I think can be quite challenging for parents and young people as well. And then we're going to finish on looking at how you can support your child's exploration into identity. So a little disclaimer, so we are a mental health charity and we aren't specialists in LGBTQ+ issues, but we do speak often with young people about how exploring their sexual and gender identity affects their mental health. So it's for the mental health reasons that we are delivering this particular seminar today. Okay, so we'll start by looking at what makes up identity. So our definition here is our identity is our own perceived sense of self, defined by our physical, psychological, or interpersonal characteristics. So there's three main things there that go towards the sense of self: the physical sense, the psychological sense, the interpersonal relationship side of things. So around here, we've got a list of lots of things that feed in to the sense of self. So it could be your ethnicity. It could be the moral attitudes that you have grown up with or decided upon yourself. It can be based on past experiences of the world, political views, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your religious or your spiritual beliefs, the roles that you have had in relationships and how that has fed into your sense of self. It can be, when we get older, partly to do with our profession. Cultural elements can weave into that, social elements as well, the groups that we feel we belong to or we want to belong to. Our physical ability, what we're able to do, what we're able to express with our bodies, and our gender as well. That lots and lots of elements there can all feed into how we experience ourselves. And what we want to do, I suppose, as parents is to try to help support our young people to explore some of these different elements and what they mean to your young person and where they feel comfortable. Okay, so we're going to have a look at a few statistics here. 52% of LGBTQ+ people have experienced depression in the last year. That comes from Stonewall, one of the leading charities in the sector. 46% of trans people and 31% of non-trans LGBTQ people have had suicidal thoughts. Again, that comes from Stonewall. Members of BAME communities are more likely to experience poor mental health as a result of inequalities to accessing support. And that one comes from Rethink. So as you can see there is a huge number of people who identify as LGBTQ+, and then obviously the BAME community's statistic as well, that actually have experienced depression, suicidal thoughts, poor mental health, because of inequalities, either to accessing support or because of the way they are treated. What we like to draw a line between is that the fact that people experience depression or poor mental health is not because of their sexuality. It is more because of the way they are treated, because of some of the choices or the way that they are, the sexuality that they have. So for us as a mental health charity, it's very important that we challenge these stigma and we challenge these inequalities so that it releases the pressure and the negative influence on people's mental health. So it's really important that we learn more about the communities that our young people may be identifying with. And there are many, many more than there used to be. So certainly when I was growing up, there was not as many sort of options, I suppose, explored or available. And so that can be overwhelming for parents coming to it slightly new. So Steph is going to take us through some of the different communities, some of the language associated, just to sort of, so you can become more familiar with these terms.
Thank you very much, Amy. So you can see here on the side of the screen, we've got our gingerbread person, and this our gingerbread person is going to illustrate some of the different ideas between sexual orientation and gender orientation as we go through the presentation. So to begin with, sexual orientation is the overall umbrella term we use that describes a person's attraction to another person. So this could be their sexual attraction, or it could be romantic orientation. These terms refer to a person's sense of identity based on their attractions or even lack thereof. So you can see there that it's illustrated as in the heart, so our attraction to other people. Some of the language around sexual orientation, it's constantly evolving, and words that were possibly once common back when we were younger are maybe less so common to be used these days. And also their meanings can change, and some of them can have negative connotations. So we're going to go through some of the more used ones currently and sort of explain what the differences between them are. So the first one here is lesbian and gay. So that refers to someone who identifies as either a man or a woman, and they have a romantic and or sexual attraction towards someone of that same gender. Bisexual, being bi, is an umbrella term used to describe someone who has a romantic or sexual orientation towards both genders of male and female. Asexual is a term specifically used to describe someone who has a lack of or varying or occasional experiences of sexual attraction. So it's not necessarily that they have no sexual or romantic attraction to someone else, but maybe that it can be vary or it only feels quite occasional. And then finally here, pansexual refers to someone who can have a romantic and or sexual attraction towards someone regardless of their sexual identity or gender. We can completely empathise that sometimes these sort of terms, and there are a lot more, can feel a bit of a minefield to some people. I think our main takeaway here from this is that if you are unsure about someone in your life, or maybe your young people in your family, and you want to sort of ask them about this to be more informed, to be more aware, just be respectful, and it is absolutely okay to ask. You're showing an interest and care in them and their life. It's okay to ask. Moving on now to gender identity. So you can see here on our gender person, there's identity, there's expression, we've already looked at attraction, and then there's sex. So this is going to sort of define those a bit clearer. So someone's sex is the physical anatomy, their genetic makeup that we are all assigned at birth that is either male, female, or in some instances intersex. Our gender, though, is the qualities and traits associated with the ideas of masculinity and femininity. So these ideas are largely culturally determined. So for instance, some stereotypical ones for men could be that they seem a bit more factual and logical. They're quite competitive. They can maybe show high levels of aggression for things such as contact sport or destructive play as young children. And then these ideas, stereotypes of femininity can be that women tend to be more gentle, more caregiving, more emotionally intuitive. And what happens culturally is that they often are largely associated with the sex that then we're assigned at birth. Our gender identity and expression is our innate sense of our own gender. So whether that be female or male or something else, is how we see our own gender versus what was assigned to us at birth. And then how we choose to outwardly express that gender is within the context of societal expectations on gender. So you can see here we have these arrows going sort of back and forth a bit under the different headings here of gender identity, gender expression, biological sex, and our attraction. And what that's to illustrate is that it's not always black or white, it's not always one or the other. Actually, a lot of these things can be on a sliding scale. So our gender identity can be that we sometimes, how we perceive our own gender can mostly feel like a woman, but there are some days where actually I feel a lot more masculine, and those sort of traits that are associated with masculinity, maybe I'm feeling a bit more that way. Just like through life, we're going to sort of change, we're going to grow, and these elements ourselves can also fluctuate. So for instance, when we're thinking of somebody who is gender fluid, their gender identity between womanness and manness would possibly change quite a lot. Gender expression, so how we express the gender we sort of are feeling inside, that can also change. There can be days where, for instance, I feel very feminine and maybe would be wearing dresses, maybe doing makeup. Again, those sort of qualities, stereotypical qualities are associated with femininity. And then there are days where I can feel a lot more masculine and I'm wearing tops that aren't fitted and are a lot more unisex, or darker clothes, jeans, those kinds of, again, the expression that tends to be associated a lot more masculine. A biological sex, so I imagine a lot of people would assume that it tends to be one or the other, but there are lots of people who have very androgynous parts about them. So there's lots of women who maybe have extra facial hair, or have broader shoulders, or have more defined muscles, which we would typically associate with more of a masculine physique. And then there are lots of men out there who are biologically men, but have got maybe broader hips, more curves, more feminine sort of biological features. And then lastly as well, who we can be attracted to, that can also fluctuate. You know, we could be in a straight relationship where we're attracted to men from a female perspective, but we can also appreciate and notice that other women are also attractive without necessarily meaning that we are now actually bisexual. It's just about how fluid it can be and how it can change. Some of the language then around gender identity. So trans is a term to describe someone whose gender is not the same or does not sit comfortably with the sex that they were assigned at birth. So a transgender man is a term to describe someone whose sex was assigned female at birth, but they identify and live as a man. So they are a transgender man. Same with a transgender woman, is describe somebody who was assigned male at birth, but identifies and lives as a woman. Non-binary is an umbrella term for people whose gender identity doesn't sit comfortably with being a man or a woman, those sort of societal ideas of what is a man and a woman, and actually feels that they fit somewhere in the middle, and so they term themselves non-binary. Gender fluid, though, is someone who feels that their identity is not fixed at either a male or a female. They do identify with those qualities, but feel that rather they fluctuate over time between the two. And finally, pronouns are the preferred gender pronouns that refer to the set of pronouns that as an individual. Let's start that sentence again. And finally, our pronouns are our preferred gender pronouns that refer to as an individual what they prefer to be. Sorry, it's a lot of the same words there.
All right, it's all right. We all have. The thing is, once you've gone wrong once, it's you just kind of go, whoa, your brain.
I know, yeah. Okay.
Deep breath.
And finally, our pronouns. Our gender pronouns specifically refer to how an individual prefers others to refer to them, and that reflects their gender identity. So as I identify my gender as a woman, my pronouns would be she or her. So you could say, she did this in the seminar. Male pronouns would be him and he. And somebody who's non-binary would be they, them, or their. So I'm sure we've all had examples where maybe we're talking about a friend of ours who's a woman, who identifies as a woman, but we could refer to them in a sentence of, oh, they left their coat here. So that's a non-binary pronoun to use, even though we know that they identify as a woman. So that's kind of the ways that you can use those non-binary pronouns in a sentence. Again, very similar to the sexual orientation language. The main takeaway is always just be respectful of another human being. And if you're not sure of their pronouns, if you're not sure of their gender identity, it's okay to ask. Finally, when it comes to supporting a child with their identity, and if they're in a time of their life where they're kind of figuring out who they are, how they sort of feel, sit comfortably in their sexual orientation or their gender identity, it's important to just let them know that they are loved and accepted, that it is okay that they're going through a time where they're trying to figure things out and that you're there for them. Encourage dialogue and have these open conversations, you know, ask them questions. Are the people in your year group, are they sort of questioning these things about them? Have you ever kind of questioned these things about you? What are your thoughts on this? Learn the facts. So just watching this seminar is a great place to start, but we are going to share with you some further signposting to other organisations that have a lot more information and a lot more seminars to see on the topics. Stay in touch with the school, you know, see if they've got any LGBTQ groups going, if there's any further support that's available in the school. You know, at the beginning of this seminar, we talked about how mental health has a real impact on people who are sort of understanding their identity. It's great to then keep in touch with the school and see if there are any further support. Keep an eye out for signs of bullying. Encourage healthy relationships, just as you would in any kind of relationship. What is acceptable, how we should respect ourselves, respect others, and encourage them to live authentically, to live the life that is true for them and not try to be forced into an idea that society thinks would be best for them.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Steph. I'm going to have a little look at some signposting now. As Steph mentioned, there are some places that have a lot more information on LGBTQ+ issues and ideas. The first here is It's Pronounced Metrosexual at www.itspronouncedmetrosexual.com. Stonewall, www.stonewall.org.uk. We also have Mermaids UK and Childline. All of those have lots of information around the issues that we've been discussing today. And that's the end of the presentation. So thank you very much for taking the time to watch this today. If you have any further queries or you want to find out more information about mental health in particular, you can visit the Mind website, www.mind.org.uk. And Steph and I are available as well at Newport Mind for anyone local who has any concerns or queries. Thanks very much for listening today. Take care.
Thank you.